From Dustin Poirier congratulating Cerrone on his Hall of Fame induction to Anthony Pettis calling him a true legend, here's how the other fighters reacted to the Cowboys' star-studded Hall of Fame induction. Let's start with when he was inducted into the UFC HOF. In the midst of the UFC San Antonio broadcast, the audience were presented with a video montage of the Cowboys' career highlights and best moments, right before his family joined him in the ring to surprise him with an announcement. Before this, Cerrone had declared his retirement after he was defeated via submission by Jim Miller last July. As of right now, Donald shares the record for the second highest number of wins at 23 and has the second most finishes, 16. He also holds the record for the most post-fight bonus awards, 18, and has fought in the third most fights at 38. He's also landed the highest number of knockouts in the history of the UFC, 20. That's insane. It's only fitting that he joins the Hall of Fame like some of the other GOATs, such as Jose Aldo, Jens Pulver, and Anderson Silva. Of course, it was a big moment for the newly inducted Hall of Famer, and here's how the other fighters reacted to his induction into the HOF. The official Twitter account of the promotion posted a picture of Cerrone with his career highlights, and captioned it, writing right into the Hall of Fame. That's pretty clever, I'm not gonna lie. Donald's fellow MMA veteran, Dustin "The Diamond" Poirier, also took to Twitter to congratulate him on the induction, along with Kelvin Gastelum, who said that this induction was well-deserved for the legend. And he's not wrong. Cerrone's entire career has been a testament to the fact that he's one of the greatest of all-time fighters, and Bilal Muhammad seems to agree. Upon Donald's induction, Bilal posted a photo of the mixed martial artist, the man who never missed his fights. That's too true, Bilal. Alan Joban also congratulated the Cowboy on the HOF nod and called him a legend, while Nico Price said that it was an honor to share the cage with the pro fighter. He congratulated Donald and added that he deserved the induction. Anthony Pettis, too, praised the fighter on his HOF induction and called him a true legend.
But man, I just went in, fought. He's a legend, bro. We're friends, man. Yeah. And we played it on the line. You know, he hit me, I hit him. That's what it's all about.
Words can't say how right you are, Pettis. Michael Mallet and Rafael Dos Anjos applauded the fighter for the honor too, with the latter posting a couple of emojis of two hands clapping. Boston Salmon congratulated the big guy too, and so did Damian Brown, who said that Cerrone was one of the best to ever do it, and that he never missed an opportunity to see the fighter brawl. And finally, Jamie Mullarkey, the Australian mixed martial artist, congratulated Donald on the induction too. This all must have been pretty heartwarming for the pro fighter, especially since he only recently called it quits in July of last year. His inclusion into the Hall of Fame was a surprise. While he was in attendance at the UFC San Antonio card, the UFC pretty much shocked Donald when they announced his induction into the HOF, and I'm pretty sure I saw him holding back tears of joy when he found out. The Cowboy started his MMA career in the WEC, where he displayed his insanely sharp Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu skills, after which he was absorbed into the greatest MMA promotion of all time, the UFC.
He's using the kicks.
Oh! And the Cowboy connects with a straight right, dropping McCullough to the canvas. Now he gets the full.
He proved to be one of their most exciting fighters. And honestly, he was the very first mixed martial artist who made it cool to accept fights on a short-term notice. Over the course of his career, he amassed an impressive record, which has put him in the top 3 for a good number of UFC records. Honestly, he's a true action fighter. One of the main reasons that he's been inducted into the HOF is because he's such an entertaining fighter. I mean, we all remember Donald Cerrone versus Conor McGregor at UFC 246. Even though he was fighting for the promotion's lightweight crown in 2015, and by then he'd competed in some pretty big fights, by the beginning of 2020, the Cowboy had still never fought in a UFC pay-per-view main event. Of course, that changed when he was given the biggest opportunity of all time at UFC 246. The professional MMA fighter was matched with one of the most famous fighters in the history of the UFC, the former lightweight and featherweight title holder, Conor McGregor. You guys won't imagine the hype around this fight. It was set up to be the biggest fight in the history of the promotion. Donald's reputation for thrilling fights and his willingness to pound his opponents drew over 1 million buys for the event. Despite the fact that he didn't win this fight, this was one of the most memorable moments of the Cowboy's career because he'd been a part of the biggest main events in UFC history. Not many folks expected him to win anyway, because he was coming off like 2 straight losses. Either way, it was a pretty exciting night. Just like UFC Fight Night 139, where Donald Cerrone was paired up against Mike Perry. Now, this was the UFC's 25th year anniversary, and the event was all set to take place in the birthplace of the promotion, Denver, Colorado, which you might remember is Donald's very own hometown too. So it made a ton of sense for him to be involved. The slight issue, he was coming off like 1 win out of 5 total fights, and it was beginning to look like he'd passed his prime. He was kind of beginning to let his fans down, honestly. Not a lot of people were expecting him to be able to stand his own against the power puncher that Mike Perry is. But in that welterweight bout, Cerrone managed to surprise us all. With his hometown family and friends cheering him on, the Cowboy pulled the performance of a lifetime. The 2 fighters crashed into the canvas pretty early on during the fight, where Donald showcased his underrated ground game and wound up on top from where he took Mike's back and went from a triangle choke to a stunning armbar, which ultimately forced Platinum to bow out. This win set the course of Donald's career straight back on track and also earned him the record for the most wins in the history of the UFC, along with the most finishes. The fact that it happened in the town he belonged to made it all the more special. It was one of the best moments of his career, not unlike the highlight reel-worthy moment that took place in UFC 202 in his fight against Rick Story. Now, unlike pro wrestling, which is often made fun of because of how scripted it looks, the UFC is as real as it gets. I mean, that was literally the promotion's old tagline. But every now and then, the UFC generates a moment that looks closer to fiction than anything else. And something like that definitely happened in Donald's fight with Story in 2016. The Cowboy had already emerged victorious in the first round of their welterweight bout, with his incredibly accurate striking skills and precision. But no one could have imagined the horror he'd unleash in the second round. With only 3 minutes left in that round, Cerrone avoided a left-hand blow from Rick and then unleashed a flurry of strikes and blows that looked like they were coming straight from a Mortal Kombat game. He took on Story with a left hand, then a right body shot, which he followed up with another left-hand strike and a head kick, and finally, a combination of shots, each of which landed exactly where it was supposed to. It was like a freaking action sequence. It came as no surprise when Rick Story wilted under the barrage, and Donald won via technical knockout. The Cowboys delivered some pretty exciting fights before this, but this was pure balls-to-the-wall action. Nothing could even come half as close to how incredible this fight sequence was. Honestly, no one would have been surprised if Bruce Buffer, the ring announcer, declared Cerrone as the winner via fatality. Anyway, that's everything on how the fighters reacted to Donald Cerrone's HOF induction.